We are very grateful. We've just received a donation from our colleagues from the UN women, from the UN system. We are working for different UN agencies, and the donation is in the form of sanitary wear, specifically reusable sanitary pads. So in the pack that we have just received, there is a packet of reusable sanitary pads, which I'm going to open now. So there are 4 pads inside, and this will be distributed to the girls that we work with across the country. We have programs in Bire with young women who are in school. Some of them are out of school. We're also implementing programs in Hopley and Epworth and other low-income communities. And in these communities, you find there are some girls who are actually forced to engage in transactional sex, or it's sexual exploitation. Some people say children selling sex, not so that they get a cell phone or so that they can buy a car, but they are having to trade sex so that they can just be able to buy a packet of pads. Some of them actually have said they have no choice but to just look around the household and see what rag they can come across, and then they have had to use that whenever they get their periods. We have girls who have said, I've missed days of school because I don't have access to pads. Others have had to use tissue, which then rolls up in their panty, may fall off, and some of them are saying, your peers laugh at you when such things happen. If you soil your skirt or your uniform in class, it means that you have to sit there throughout the entire period, like class. You have to leave the class last and try as much as possible to conceal the part where your skirt is soiled. Otherwise, you just have to deal with the shame that comes with, being regarded as dirty just because you have soiled your skirt. But this issue of skirts getting soiled is because these girls have no access to decent sanitary pads. And what these women have done for us today is to come and say, we are in a more privileged position. We are employed, gainfully employed. I get a salary, and each time I get into a shop, or whenever I can, I should be able to buy a pack of pads, which I can, donate to another girl out there. And I think they've challenged us as working women, because there are things we take for granted. That we can afford does not mean everyone else can afford. And I think this is a challenge for working women out there. Whenever you can, if you get into Pick n Pay or Spar, and you are looking at the shelf and you recognize that pads have become rather expensive, think about that girl who is sitting on the street trying to sell tomatoes, or who is vulnerable, who may end up being sexually exploited for a packet of pads. Think about them, and perhaps as you pick your pack, perhaps get an additional packet of pads, which you then can donate to organizations that are working with girl children. We have a sanitary bank in Katswe, and we receive donations that we then pass on to girls out there. We're very grateful, because this is just the beginning. As we wait for the government to come up with a position around provision of free sanitary wear in our schools and in public spaces, in the meantime, we have a challenge ourselves as citizens, as people who are perhaps more privileged. We have a challenge to ensure that we take care of our little sisters who do not have access. No girl should ever have to be sexually abused by a man just so that they get a packet of decent sanitary wear. If our government can afford to mobilize resources to ensure that in every toilet you walk into there are free condoms, they certainly can make a decision to ensure that in that same toilet, if it's a female toilet, there is a packet of sanitary pads, because a girl may still become vulnerable to STIs, to HIV infections, because they are basically being exploited by someone who knows they desperately need these resources in order to access a decent pack of sanitary pads. We are also quite excited because we do have other alternatives. These reusable sanitary pads are great because they can get to keep a packet for an entire 3-year period. They also come with a panty, but we also have other alternatives such as menstrual cups, which somebody can actually keep for up to 10 years. and it only costs about $10 US, but then they get to keep it for a period of 10 years. And we have said to our government, we know that it would be a bit difficult for us to ask for $3 million annually to be able to provide sanitary wear for girls for free. But if we can also look at these other alternatives, like the menstrual cups, like the menstrual panties, like these reusable sanitary pads, then we have a whole range, including, of course, the disposable pads for when the girls need them. If we have a whole range, just as we have, if you walk into a shop, you'll find a whole range of, if you're looking at condoms, for example, or hair products, when somebody is going in there, they will take what suits them. And this is what the request is also with regards provision of sanitary wear for our girls. We should also be looking at a whole range of products for which to choose from, so that each girl can be able to pick something that works for them. But most importantly, we have viable alternatives on the table, reusable pads. A girl can keep it for 3 years. Therefore, once you buy them a packet or two, they will not stress. Whereas for the disposable ones, sometimes they become problematic because you can only go to one school maybe once or twice, and then you say, well, let me move to another school. But what then happens during the time when you can't necessarily provide a donation? So we have alternatives, let's invest. Women that are in employment, let's support other young women out there. Parents, when you make a grocery list, if you don't have pads on the list, you should know your girl is probably being sexually exploited, because if you're not providing for that, who is?